So I've got this, we're going to play around with the gradient mesh tool, okay? Which is kind of a, I mean, some people go nuts with it. I never have. I've used it a little bit. Okay, so these are all vector. And here's the mesh, okay? Here's the image. Here's the mesh. And you can see you can get pretty hyper realistic with it. Like here, here's the mesh. And here's the image, which is, you didn't tell me that wasn't a photograph, I probably wouldn't notice. Same thing here. That make sense?
Yes.
So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate this apple, okay? So I made, you can see I traced the apple. I would do this part as a separate part. I'd probably do the leaf as a separate part and the stem as a separate part, but I'm just going to concentrate on the apple a little bit and just give you an idea how this works. Okay, so that's our outline. I'm going to select it and I'm going to go right here, mesh tool. And then if I click on this, it'll start to make based on where it thinks the vertical and the horizontal is. I'm just going to keep going. When I come down here, it'll start to create basically a mesh, like a 3D mesh almost. Put as many as you want. And then I'm going to just select all of it. That's how I usually do it. And then I've got my image right here. I'm going to use it for photo reference or for color reference. Now I'm going to go. Actually, I'm just going to go here. So I just selected that off of the apple, the shadowed part of this apple. Now, the trick to it now is that I base, and you can also go Command Y, and this will let you go into the interior and select a lot of points. Oops, you got to be on your white arrow tool. I can come in here and I can select a lot of points. If I, for whatever reason, if I try and do that here, it doesn't work. I don't know why. See, it moves the mesh. So what I'm going to do here is let's just go, just as a starting point, I'm going to go. Let's just grab a bunch. I'm going to go Command Y again, and then I'm going to go over here and grab that. And what you got to start doing here is you got to start. The trick to this is see how I'm getting a hard edge right there, like that doesn't look right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I could probably come in here. It's all about transitions here. Maybe see if I can find a sort of a half tone idea in there. No. That's way too much. I'm gonna go back to the darker areas. That's a little better. And basically, I'm gonna try and model. And then when you get up here, when you get up here to this part, to this little round part up here, you might want to go. Let's just try that. And I'm going to grab, now I'd have to build up to this. Okay, I'm going a little bit faster, but I'm going to go more down here a little bit. And I'd have to build up to that highlight. But you might want to come in here and sort of go. So you can drag these points around. And I can start to create that little center part up there on top. Let me drag this down a little bit. You can see I can start to sort of model this thing a little bit. And I'd probably go in here and make those a little brighter at some point. Ooh, wait a minute. Also, a lot of times when you grab a color like this, it'll be too dark, too light. And also, if you notice, I might tweak that lighting a little bit right now, because when I put it over here, it's not too bad, but it feels a little grayish, which I'd probably tweak a little bit. And I'd probably, now I might have to come in here and see if I can do this. I'm going to try and add an anchor point. Oh, you can. So I'm going to add a couple of anchor points here, just maybe there. Let me just try it there. And then over here. I don't know if it accepts those anchor points. That's weird. Hang on. It might not, because they're not part of the gradient map. No, it doesn't. Okay, so let's go back. Interesting. Go back to my mesh tool. That's good. So I just added another line. Oops. I'm gonna grab these. See if I can find something here that works. Yeah, start to tweak, you know, this area. So I start to pull this down so it starts to feel like this. Okay. And then get this little highlighting around the rim. You can add, just like I just did, you can come in here back to gradient mesh tool and add another layer if you want, or another grouping of lines and points. You know, just depending on what you want to do, though, is you want to get this sort of nice, smooth, like this still isn't smooth enough over here. You don't want these like kind of abrupt endings. You want it all to be nice and clean and smooth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And there's not much more to it than that. I would do this by itself, and I would do this by itself. Also, by the way, I would just set up these leaves, just set up the leaves, the overall values. Don't worry about this stuff in here. I'll show you that tomorrow. That's simple. We do that not with the gradient mesh tool. I just set this up like that, and I'd set up the overall greens in here, and then we could worry about that tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep. Does the same go for the dots on the apple?
Yeah, I'll show you that tomorrow.
Okay.
Right now, all we want to do is get the big transitions, and that's about it, right? You're sort of getting all those washes in there. It's almost like a watercolor thing. But you got to, it gets a little tricky, just, you know, and you might need to add more lines, therefore you get more points. You can move them around, and you saw when I was moving around, it sort of changed the edge a little bit. It softened up the edge a little bit, like when I moved it. But it's all about those nice, clean transitions, you know? And also, again, like when I'm picking a color, hang on, stop showing. Or no. When I'm picking a color, I think this is okay. It's actually okay. It still has light, or it still has warmth in it. But sometimes I'll pick a color on here and it looks okay in the context of the photo. But when I take it into the illustration, it looks, it could look really dull, or it just doesn't look right. So don't think you're going to be able to pick off of your photo reference and it's always going to be right, because it's not. You're almost always going to have to tweak it a little bit and make sure that the transitions are going smooth. What I get a lot of with this exercise is people doing this kind of thing, where they're like, and then they do something like this, you know, and they've got these really ridiculous, there's no transitions or anything. Then they'll go over here and they'll go, and this is the darker side. So here's the darker side. Oh, look how gray that is. That's weird. But they start getting these real patchy things like that. And it's like, just think big overall transitions. If you look, you squint down on this apple, it's pretty subtle. I mean, it's, you know, obviously lit here, but that transition to this dark is a nice, clean, simple transition. And down here where it's dark and it pulls back up into the color. And then, you know, you want to try and, just like I just did with this one, this is not a nice, that's really gray and dull, okay? That probably wouldn't work. So I'd probably have to go, well, I'm not gonna be able to pick it off that. Sometimes I might go, you know, I might kind of see if I can fix a starting point like that. Maybe get a little spectrum going on here with a little, you know, maybe I can start with my overall washes with those three colors and values, or basically values. Does that make sense? Okay, if there's no questions, then I'll see you guys.